Welcome, I'm Feek the Signifier, and I just want some of your time. Eddie Murphy is a legend, and we need to give him his roses now while he's alive. Especially in 2020, ain't no telling if he gonna be here at the end of the year. It's easy to forget this due to his later career transition from like the raunchiest comedian that your parents don't want you to watch to a regular fixture in family-friendly comedies. But before all that, he was the biggest movie star in Hollywood and basically invented the concept of crossover success. That said, Murphy never took his crossover success as a sign to diminish his blackness or decrease the connection he had to black media and black fans. No shade to similar megastars like Will Smith or Denzel Washington, whose rise to stardom is low-key accompanied by a diminishment in black faces in their films. Murphy was the opposite. The bigger he got during his heyday, the blacker he got. And no movie typifies this more than likely his best and most enduring work, Coming to America. But the question is, why? What made this movie so beloved for so long by so many to the point where over 30 years later, we're finally getting a sequel? I'm Feek the Signifier, and welcome to the second episode of Black Movie Breakdown.
Dragmatic.
For better or worse, America and really the world has always loved consuming and in many cases imitating black entertainers and the culture that surrounds us. One can see this through the music, fashion, sports, etc. It's the reason why the saying, "What if America loved black people as much as they love black culture?" hits so hard. There's this profound disconnect where everyone can root for black athletes, watch black movie stars, sing black songs, and definitely do black dances, but struggle with the value of black lives. But I digress. I'm getting off topic already. The most interesting place to me for this love affair has always been in the world of comedy. You could arguably look back at Richard Pryor as the first true black comedy megastar of the modern era, although many others paved the way and made significant contributions before, during, and after his time. Still, he was, again, one of the first people to cross over to the level he did, where he was performing for large mixed and sometimes predominantly white audiences. And since Pryor, it's almost felt like a passing of the torch type situation where every decade or so a new comedian emerges to take up that black comedian megastar mantle. Right now it's Kevin Hart, but before him it was Dave Chappelle, before him it was Chris Rock, and before Rock it was Eddie Murphy, who was passed the mantle from Pryor himself. That said, none of these men before or after Murphy ever had his level of success. Rock redefined what types of jokes you could tell to white people. Yes, Hart has become a mainstream success, probably made more money than all of these dudes despite having a lot of missteps. And Chappelle is probably a true master of joke telling compared to all the rest of them, but none of them dominated this space like Murphy did. In the 80s and 90s, before constant media saturation, it seemed like Eddie Murphy was everywhere. Starting out on Saturday Night Live in the 80s, Eddie broke out in 1983 with 48 Hours and took off from there, signing a deal with Paramount Pictures and releasing multiple box art smashes for the next 20 years, ranging from black classics to cult classics to trash classics. But it's his string of hits in the late 80s to the mid 90s that probably gives him a special place in the heart of aging black millennials and Gen Xers, with his greatest work being 1988's Coming to America.
When I was thinking about Coming to America just in a few minutes before we started talking, I was struck by how conceptual Coming to America is when I think about it as an adult, because I haven't watched it for many, many years. I mostly watched it as like a teenager, right. Early 20s, and it was just like, oh, this is funny. I remember this from my childhood. It's the best. But when I thought about the concept now, it's just so absurd and so black. It's amazing. The whole concept of I'm looking for my queen, so I'm going to go to Queens, which sets up the entire premise of the movie.
Coming to America was Murphy's first auteur-driven project. After earning the opportunity to call his shot with the success of Trading Places and Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2, Murphy was able to write the project and get it picked up off the strength of his star power alone, and had plans to actually direct it before bringing in John Landis at the last minute. It was Murphy's first explicitly black movie and was loosely based off his comedy and actually one of his biggest fears in life at the time.
I was waiting on the line, and I saw the Inquirer magazine while I was waiting on the line, and I saw Johnny Carson on the front page. It was a picture of him like this. Then I said, what's up with Johnny? I turned to the inside story, and his wife was on the other page, and she was like this. And overhead it said, Johnny's wife wants half Johnny's money. I turned that shit back to Johnny. Then I started thinking about it. Half.
Now, you might be thinking that sounds pretty awful and misogynistic, and, well, you are right. I can't really go any further without pointing out that Murphy was a man of his time. A lot of his comedy and the comedy of his contemporaries was rooted in misogyny, homophobia, transphobia. And this is actually a little ironic because Murphy himself was never the typical image of masculinity, even for the time. He always flirted with genderqueer imagery, and his clothing garnered a lot of rumors about his sexuality. He has since apologized for his older jokes. That said, although there are some progressive overtures about women president in this movie and Akeem is a paragon of wholesome masculinity, there are still definitely some moments that would not fly by today's standards. So as I gush over this movie, please know I do recognize where and why some others might not be as forgiving to it in 2020. With that understood, one of the first things that needs to be pointed out is how much of an anomaly this movie was. It had an all-black cast with a few well-known black actors in black circles, as well as a few lesser-knowns, but nobody as bankable as Murphy, making it somewhat of a gamble by the studio to spend $28 million on. But when it grossed nearly $300 million worldwide, it should have proven that a well-done movie with an all-black cast was a bankable venture. And this is before social media movements, both justified and manufactured, could create buzz in black social circles to drive hype for a film.
What do you think makes the movie like so good? Why did it hit? Why is it timeless?
Well, first of all, some of the comedians, it's like top echelon at that time. So it definitely captured a moment where we had black comedians working as a collective. I don't think you really see that nowadays. You don't really get to see movies like that with so much talent in one room.
So this cast of talent includes the legendary Arsenio Hall, who is deserving of his own video one day. For those too young to remember him, he's kind of a proto Nick Cannon, like even right down to the way he got in trouble and lost a lot of his money. Next, we have John Amos pulling back into his father character role as a successful black businessman, Cleo McDowell. Eric LaSalle, aka Drake's dad, is a living, breathing, light-skinned dude meme. And then, of course, you have James Earl Jones and Madge Sinclair, aka, believe it or not, Mufasa and Sarabi, who are instantly iconic as the low-key intimidating black parents of every rich Negro you knew in undergrad. But also peep the looks Murphy provided for a few at the time much lesser known future icons. Still, regardless of the rest of the cast, for the first time in his career, this was clearly and truly Murphy's show. And it would cement him as a bankable star and define an Eddie Murphy movie for the rest of his career. And would, for better or ill, cast a shadow among mainstream black comedy and comedians for well over a decade after. This was the first time that Murphy, whose greatest asset as a comedian is his work as an impressionist, would play multiple roles in a film using special effects from heavy makeup. Audiences, especially black audiences, hadn't really seen nothing like this before. An actor playing multiple small but hilarious comedic roles in the film while in heavy makeup, but the key role being played completely straight, to the point where it wasn't until I was an adult watching this that it hit me that while looking like himself, Murphy barely delivers a single joke. You can't help but feel he was robbed of some awards. But the question that sticks with me is why exactly? What was the key ingredient that pushed this over the top? Why is it so good?
I mean, for me, it was just another example of black excellence. You know what I'm saying? Prince Akeem coming from Zamunda and just being able to like show wealth of that magnitude, something when I was younger, I had never really seen a whole lot of. Like, you know, I seen like stuff like the Cosby Show, things of that nature, like, you know, that level of excellence. But that was still like, you know, the America level, you know what I mean? And just seeing like his background and seeing where he was coming from, and then him coming to America, like literally, and just seeing how we were living, and just like the contrast of the two was just always crazy to me.
I think social-wise is the connectivity with Mother Africa and the United States, and we've always been trying to buttress and fortify that connection of our origins, the homelands. It shows that where we are from where we came.
It's not as if other comedians hadn't tried the same formula, Murphy included. I think the key was the confluence of talent, themes, and just general excellence in the movie for the time. Like right off the bat, the movie hits you with black images the world had never seen. Zamunda is presented as this proto-Wakanda of sorts. Everyone is beautiful and healthy. There's freaking elephants and giraffes everywhere. This is Pan-Africanism in its glory, well before some of its warts would reveal themselves some decades later.
Eddie Murphy has always idolized this notion of black royalty, and that exists in a lot of different ways in the black community, depending on the era. So you have Harlem Nights, where they were gangsters, but they were the black elites. You know, they were the underground elites. But he, even though he was known for being raunchy, he always was pushing for black excellence, in my opinion.
But beyond the beauty, the jokes still stand strong, and the comedy is actually a little apart from typical black humor at the time, even Murphy's. This is actually where you probably see the value and influence of Landis as a director, because the jokes are a bit closer to Three Amigos than they are Boomerang. There's a lot of visual puns, quick one-liners, as well as general absurdist humor, and that really wasn't all that popular in black film outside of maybe Robert Townsend and, of course, Keenan Ivory Wayans and his productions. Then, in the middle of all this, like as we're traveling through Zamunda, we get possibly the greatest dance number in the history of cinema. Choreographed by Paula Abdul of all people, we are suddenly greeted with this parade of melanin and movement. I can't show too much because, YouTube, but if you've seen it, you know, and if you haven't seen it, stop this video and go watch it. Like, it's macaroni touching the yams. It's so good.
From my point of view, I would describe that scene as a celebration of black artistic genius. So you've got so many different types of movement, so many different types of choreo, you've got beautiful costumes, you've got props, you've got lighting, you've got dancers, you've got actors, and they are all perfectly coordinated to come in and out of the scene in beautiful ways to create beautiful shapes with their bodies, and rose petals are flying. Like,
all right, describe the dance scene.
Oh, the dance scene. Oh my goodness. I can describe the dance scene with that one dude, right? Like that one dude. He killed
he
it,
jumps
bro.
Out
like
the crowd.
Yeah,
He just gets
killed it. He gets it. The moves were so crisp and precise. The look on his face was like, I'm in this moment. This is my dance. Like, I know this genre.
And the craziest thing is that, like, it has no real purpose. It's just like, yo, we got some dope dancers and some choreography. Like, throw that in the movie, son. That has to go right there. The movie sets up Akeem as this paragon of aspirational masculinity. And when I say that, what I mean is, like, Akeem is the man without trying hard. He don't have to front. He don't have to flex. He don't have to raise his voice. He just comes into the room and people's like, oh shit, there's the man. And they do this multiple ways. They give us a fight scene to show us physical prowess at the beginning of the movie, and that comes into play later. And they also show us that he's like woke for his time. He wants to reject the patriarchal principles of his culture. I like to think that this is a bit more representative of Murphy and his thoughts on the situation, but either way, it's as good a setup as any for a fish out of water story. Where we start to see what makes this movie special, though, is when they make it to America and head into the hood. Although all the ugly markings of poverty are there, the movie doesn't abide by the attitudes of the characters. Akeem is still full of joy and the characters he meets are still vibrant and colorful. It takes on the lens of somebody who's actually lived in these spaces, aka Murphy. The hood isn't a great place, but if it's home, you recognize its beauty, its vibrance. You witness the connections that you have to the people through the struggle, the local barber, the sweaty church deacon, the hustle man. The story refuses to frame this world as any different as the one we see in Zamunda. In fact, we're actually encouraged to regard this world as home and Zamundans as a little stuck up. Then we meet Lisa and her family, with Cleo McDowell probably being the most interesting. On the other end of the black bourgeoisie class, here's Cleo, who you have to assume fought hard to keep his storefront ripoff of McDonald's open, and unlike King Joffrey, is self-made and know what it means to struggle. Despite this, he is similar to Joffrey in that he sees the need for maintaining this economic status as more important than the individual actualization that his daughter is seeking through her philanthropy work, and thus is much more enamored with Drake's dad, despite him clearly being trash. Lisa is clearly everything Murphy's ever wanted in a woman, both in character and look. She's sweet, feminine, demure, but still formidable and capable on her own. That makes her a bit bland overall, but she still works well. Their romance and chemistry isn't anything special to write home about. The conceit is interesting. Akeem is completely dorky, but also incredibly earnest and smooth, so you kind of see how an attraction developed. Also, despite his efforts to hide his royalty like some type of bizarro world reverse flex thing, it keeps finding ways to present itself, which Lisa eventually catches on to, of course.
You have the most amazing effect on people.
No, I don't.
It's true. Look at that guy at the basketball game the other day. People love you. I bet where you're from, women practically throw themselves at your feet.
Meanwhile, Lisa's sister, the last and least significant part of the McDowell family, serves as her foil and clearly everything Murphy does not want in a woman. Again, I don't co-sign some of the subtle and not so subtle misogyny here, and there's some concerning colorism elements that you can't ignore. But I do think it's important to recognize Murphy's plight as a newly very rich and very powerful black man, fearing what his status means about himself and how people treat him differently. The concept of a newly rich and famous black man with humble beginnings struggling with love and intimacy is not new. And we tend to not validate the vulnerability that is inherent in this space because it conflicts with our ideal image of what black masculinity is. Now, it'd be nice if misogyny weren't so closely tied to it, but the space is still a valid one. That said, Lisa's sister is aggressive and rapey and materialistic. When she recognizes that Simi has money, or at least flexes like he does, she has no hesitation in moving on. She's kind of awful, but you feel bad for her because she's just trying to do her thing. And again, this is an unfair depiction of how this usually plays out, but Murphy clearly wanted to contrast the differences in his experiences here. We end with the eventual meeting of the families, which provides us with a moment allowing the king to finally hear some sooth from his wife after completely botching the entire situation with his arrogance, but not until after Lisa responded in such an unrealistic manner that it almost breaks her character. Well, I mean, it kind of works considering that A, she had proven that she doesn't care about money, and B, she takes her independence and equality in the partnership seriously, but it's still hard to swallow the idea that she would ever have risked allowing this guy, who she fell head over heels for, a man who treats her like a queen already, to just get away because he lied about how rich he actually is. Like, ma'am, y'all not even gonna talk about it. There's no conversation. Of course she does it in the end, but she still takes flight. And this actually gives us one last moment of black joy in the form of the sweetest granny you've ever seen. Lisa comes to her senses and we get a happily ever after, at least until we see what happens in the sequel some 30 years later. So like I said earlier, this is a basic fish out of water love story, which has been done in cinema plenty of times, executed at the optimum level, full of loving vignettes of blackness, allowing us to see us as we often did not get to see us, especially in this time period. All that said, don't get it twisted, this movie is funny as hell. Yeah, the movie gives us themes around love and identity, class conflict and whatnot, but it's really not that deep. The major key here is that the movie is funny as hell, and not just in one way. Like I said, visual gags, one-liners, super subtle, clever jokes, deadpan slapstick, and some insanely funny performances from Murphy and Hall in the heavy makeup. On top of all that, the movie is mimetic on a god tier level. Like, this is basically the first black meme. You'd be hard pressed to be in any group of more than 4 black people and throw out half a line from the movie and not have someone else join right in on cue. Everyone has a favorite line or 2 or 3 or more from this movie.
Taste the soup. Taste the soup. Okay, fine. I'll taste the soup. Where's the spoon? What do you know about funny, you bastards?
Man, my favorite one. I mean, and I know this is like I don't know if people catch on to this or not, but my favorite quotable from that one is when Oha is singing and he says completely free from infection.
Free from infection, to be used at your discretion, waiting only for your direction, your queen.
Can you give me a quote, like right off the top of your head? Can you act it out if it's possible? If you can't act it out, that's fine.
I guess. I'm more like, which one do I want to do?
I am very happy to be here. Man, yes.
Definitely the rap scene, the bar scene, the dating scene. In my previous life.
I was Joan of Arc in my former life.
My name is Peaches, and I'm the best. All the DJs want to feel my breast.
Oh, so I actually said it yesterday. What is this, Velvet?
So in isolation, some of these moments might not seem all that funny, but that's how memes work. These quotes have existed in this shared brain space among black people for over 20 years now. So even out of context, they bring so much joy. Even the select few black folks that aren't super into the movie, and yes, I'm reporting all of you to the Black Credit Bureau, still know the memes, still share the joy that this movie has brought for over 2 decades. But more than anything, at the end of the day, this is all about Murphy. Despite some poorly aged jokes and antics that made Murphy a bit of a pariah at times, it's clear Murphy wanted to put on for black people. He wasn't satisfied with just making money and being famous. He wanted to create new avenues for black people and widen the scope of black art in Hollywood. You see that through his constant collaboration with younger up-and-coming black comedy figures and actors up until his later career surging into family-friendly fare. But as soon as he returned to his stomping grounds, he was back telling black stories and giving looks to other black actors. He's basically said that's the only reason why he came back. All that said, Coming to America still stands as his greatest contribution to the culture by far. A movie that has stood the test of time, and though there's some warts in there, its heart and sheer brilliance makes it a black movie well worth anyone's time. What's going on, people? I just want to take a moment to say thank you to everybody that's watched and supported thus far, to the handful of new subscribers. I see you. Thank you to everybody that appeared in this episode, really just for the love, just to kind of show that it's not just me talking about how great this movie is. Shout out to Bangers, Bug, Sasha, and all the people that gave me advice going into the second episode. Hopefully it shows. And just, stick with me. New episodes coming, God willing, from this point on every 2 weeks. And every once in a while, I'll drop something like I dropped earlier this week about Fatal Affair, whenever there's like a hot movie that's just looking to be reviewed, we'll say. Either way, like, share, and subscribe. The channel grows when people interact with it. The channel grows when people share the videos, and as the views grow. If you want me to keep doing this, I need to grow. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you all so much. Peace.